Hello, I'm Justin Wheeler, and welcome to this episode of Nonstop Nonprofit. Welcome back, nonprofit friends. Nonstop Nonprofit has a whole new season ahead, and we're kicking it off with a compilation series loaded with live interviews from AFP ICON 2022. Hang out at our booth with us and talk to nonprofit's brightest stars about trends, impact, and the future of fundraising. As a bonus, we're capping this series off with the best clips from last season. So if you're new to the podcast, stick with us. You'll get all the goods in a fraction of the time. Episode 4 of our compilation series features Taylor Shanklin, Madison Gonzalez, Chad Barger, and Courtney Gaines. Let's dive in. It is your number one priority to ensure that your business can continue to deliver on its mission, whether it's this year, next year, and beyond.
So we're creating this inclusive environment, building between diverse communities to ensure that our young people can thrive.
I'm always so baffled when I do webinars, and there's always somebody at the end who raises their hand and says, I'm the development director, should I have access to the budget? I'm always like, yes, you've got to know that.
The best thing you can ever do as a nonprofit leader is spend as much money as possible on your story.
Then you're doing it wrong.
Okay.
That is unacceptable, and that is not the way to run a board.
The best thing that we can do is just raise as much money as possible and then give it to the people around the world.
If you're going to be sustainable, you have to have a multi-channel strategy to reach all of these different generations of donors however they want to be reached.
One of the principal values that we carry as an organization is to live grace over guilt. And we believe that grace is the greatest agent for change that anyone can ever experience.
We all need each other in terms of other nonprofits working together to solve things.
The more nonprofits can give their donor base that experience of the impact that's being made on the ground level, there's nothing else you have to give someone. This is Nonstop Nonprofit. In this segment, Taylor Shanklin, CEO, founder, and expert marketing leader, brings some interesting examples of nonprofits overcoming growth obstacles with some innovation and explains how changing your mindset can change everything. Taylor, thank you so much for joining the podcast here at AFP. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to be here. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. So something I've been thinking about lately, I'd love to get your kind of thoughts and perspective on it. So I've been thinking about the pace in which nonprofits move, specifically around change. Am I in my head, or do you see this as a challenge in this space today?
Oh, it's absolutely a challenge. And the bigger you are, the more averse to change you are. I've seen this my entire career. I've been working in the nonprofit sector for about 15 years now. And it is the thing that I think holds nonprofits back the most. We as humans are like risk averse, and we don't like change. It's in our very nature, I think, not to like change, but for some reason in the nonprofit space, like it's worse than other arenas. And I've been in startup before, I've been in for-profit, and it's certainly something that affects this sector more.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, we need to do something about it, and I think part of it is just helping to shift mindsets.
Yeah, totally. You know, Facebook used to have a value, move fast, break things.
Yeah.
And they became famous for it early on, and they've since moved away because they were breaking too many things.
Right, yeah.
You can
go too far.
You can go too far. But it led to obviously enormous growth. And I know that, you know, Facebook is different than a nonprofit organization, but I do think that the inability for organizations, and like you said, like especially large organizations, to move fast, especially around things that I would say are less risky, like new tech, new fundraising programs. It has a long-term impact on the growth of the organization.
It does. You know, sometimes I'm going to say something people might not like. Sometimes I wonder how much they want to grow. You know, and I know that sounds weird, and it might not even be on a conscious level.
Yeah.
But you do have to ask that question, what is it that makes nonprofits so hesitant to make changes? I've seen little things like you said, that you would think would be simple. Adopting a project management tool, for example.
Yeah.
I've seen that take months and months, and it's like, it's Trello, y'all.
It's a free version.
It's free. It's supposed to help you get organized so that you can do a better job with your campaigns, with raising money, with keeping all of your stuff together, and yet, well, I don't know, I just, can't learn it. Is so-and-so going to be upset we're not using this project management tool? And so I think people get too much in their heads and think that they have to get buy-in at every little level. I think people have a lot of fear, and so they go around and it's like death by committee. In more startup world, like, you do see that fail faster motto often, and it's true. Sometimes you can go a little too fast and you have to slow down, but I do think it helps you learn, and I think that's one of the things that nonprofits miss out on by not changing anything. They are missing out on a lot of learning opportunity.
They look at failure as a net negative, not necessarily a net positive, and there's a lot of learning when you fail. And going back to the buy-in, I often refer to death by board, because and I think this is less common at the larger nonprofits, more in the mid to like smaller nonprofits, where the board has to sign off on approval for everything. And that's just not the function of the board, and it shouldn't be the function of the board. And in many ways, I have a thesis, which we won't go too much into, that boards are one of the number one causes for lack of growth in smaller to mid-sized nonprofits. I don't know if you've seen that or experienced that.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a good thesis, and I've definitely seen it happen. I do think that I don't understand it either. Like, why? I don't think that's the board's. Maybe I don't know enough about boards.
Well, their fiduciary, their primary is to be fiduciary responsible for the organization.
Right.
A budget gets passed. It's passed. You don't need to make decisions on software that the nonprofit's buying and so forth. And so I think that there's just too much oversight. And that is what it is. But the other thing I wanted to ask about is sort of on the opposite, or nonprofits that maybe you've seen are moving fast and are prioritizing growth and exploring new things. Is there a nonprofit or two that stands out in your mind that you think is a good sort of case study for this concept of moving fast?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one example. This is an organization I used to work with. I don't work with now, but I've got a good friend there, and she's been telling me about how they are starting a peer-to-peer pickleball program. Because apparently pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America. I don't know if you knew that. I found that out recently.
I do have a pickleball net.
Everyone loves pickleball. I remember playing as a kid. And it's really funny because she was telling me how like they're working on implementing this, and they're like, you know what? We decided. They've done walks for years. They've done employee engagement peer-to-peer programs for years. And now they are doing something on pickleball because it's an innovative sport that apparently is picking up a lot of steam. So I think that's a good example of it. It'll be interesting. It hasn't launched yet, so that's probably why I'm not naming it, because I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about it. But I think it's an interesting example of them looking at the market and saying, what's new and exciting and different, and how can we take the same principles of peer-to-peer and social fundraising and take that into something that people haven't done before? Maybe they reminisce as a kid playing pickleball at summer camp, whatever, and coming back and getting involved in something that feels new. And I think it doesn't even take all that much to give your donors, people who interact with your organization, something that just feels new. But like, so it's pickleball. Like, why? It's not risky. It sounds fun. Let's just try it.
Totally.
So it's cool to see them doing that.
I love pickleball, so I'm going to keep my eye out for this fundraising campaign.
I think I'm going to go play. Well, so funny thing, I live in a little town in the mountains in North Carolina, and the rec center is building pickleball. Like, I go to the rec center down the street because I go swim there a lot. They have new pickleball courts that they're putting in. So I learned about this. I've heard one or two other people talk about pickleball lately, and then the rec center, they're like, we're putting in pickleball. I'm like, where did this come from?
That's awesome. What are you most excited for? This is a question I've been asking here with different nonprofit leaders and service providers, is what are you most excited for the remainder of 2022? Whether it's a project you're working on, something new you're developing for alongside your clients. What are you looking forward to the next, call it 7 months?
7 months. I do move fast and fail fast, so I think 2 or 3 months ahead, Justin. No. Actually, I'm excited. There's a project that I've been having a lot of conversations on, and it's building out an e-commerce experience for an organization. And they're thinking different about, like, they're actually bringing their kind of social enterprise group and their nonprofit group together to say, how can we fundraise and invest in our community and our partners to build something that's different than just fundraising. And so we're working on this whole Shopify thing for them.
Awesome.
I've never worked with a nonprofit before on a Shopify site, and thinking through, like, they're going to provide low cost special assistance products on this site to
Very
people
cool.
who need them. So I think that's something that it's nice to see, that kind of innovation where they're thinking different and outside the box, and it's not just your standard, well, let's just throw up a donation campaign. They're like, no, let's sell a product. Let's sell that product at a good price for people who need that product, and let's do it on a tool like Shopify, which is more modern, which you see more in the for-profit space usually.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, cool. All right, I know you have to speak here in a few minutes, so I'm going to ask you some rapid-fire questions. Okay. There's no wrong answer. There are better answers, but no wrong answers. No, just kidding. All right, here we go. Movies or series?
Movies.
What's your favorite movie?
Ooh. I don't know. I like, this is a really dumb one, but I really love that movie Can't Hardly Wait.
Okay.
With Keith Ledger.
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to watch it a lot. I mean, I haven't seen it in years, but that was the first movie
thing
that popped into my head.
There you go. It's left. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos. Yeah.
Beach or the mountains?
The mountains.
You're in the mountains.
Yes.
What mountain in North Carolina or mountains?
I live in Boone. It's close to Asheville.
Oh my gosh! So I used to be. I used to work at Invisible Children.
Yeah.
And we toured in Boone all the time, and I stayed there a couple nights. I was like, dude, this is the coolest mountain town I've ever been to.
I love it. I love it. I moved
awesome.
from Texas. It's totally different.
Very different scenery.
Very different.
Very
I love
different
it.
scenery.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Digital reading or an actual book? Book. Hardcover or soft?
Soft.
Really?
Yeah.
Just more compact, easy to travel with,
I
or
have small hands,
okay.
and I think something, moving it around, and I don't know, it's just easier to navigate.
All right. Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Yeah. Me too. Football or football?
Oh, foosball.
No, football. Football. Football or football?
Or football. Oh, I don't know, football.
Okay. That was hard to say. I don't know why it's hard to say.
If I had to choose one.
All right, last one.
Pickleball, man. Come on. We talked about this.
Hey, there's no wrong answer. There you go. Moana or Aladdin?
Aladdin. Yeah.
The cartoon or the real one?
The cartoon. The real one's pretty good, though.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm old school cartoon.
Yeah.
I love Jasmine.
Love Jasmine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
having
Good
me.
luck on your talk today.
Thanks, Justin. This was
All
fun.
Right. Thanks.
Bye.
In this segment, Madison Gonzalez, ED of Morning Light, brings hot storytelling tips and reminders designed to push you past the planning stage into serious story mode. It's amazing how many aha moments she covered in our time chatting. Madison, thank you so much for joining Nonstop Nonprofit Podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Is this your first time AFP, or have you been coming over the years?
So this is my first AFP ICON. I've been to another conference, LEAD in Indianapolis, which is my hometown.
Okay.
So I was happy to drive down the street and go to that.
Yeah, awesome. So before we jump into today's topic of storytelling, tell us a little bit about yourself and your nonprofit.
I would love to. So my nonprofit really dovetails right into storytelling. I learned the power of story through it. We're called Morning Light, and we operate the Abby Hunt Bryce home in Indianapolis, which is a free hospice home. So you can imagine being terminally ill, which is 6 months or less to live. And you can imagine not having a home and not having a support system. The people we serve have both of those. And so we really try to make the end of life as peaceful, as comfortable as possible. We believe that nobody should die alone. And we believe that everybody, regardless of your background, income, should have dignity at the end of life.
Absolutely.
And the end of life is such a unique and beautiful time because people are so open and reflective and eager to share their insights, their experiences, the things that they've learned. Everybody wants to leave a legacy. And so when I started working at Morning Light and interviewing the people that we serve and just getting to know them as human beings, I developed this obsession, I guess you could say, with storytelling and legacy and just the power of all of that.
Yeah. How did you get involved with the organization. What led you to that line of work?
It's a funny story. So my background is actually event planning. So my passion is celebrating life. I love, holidays, events.
Yeah.
I went to school for that. I did one wedding and I thought, no, thank you. I don't want to do that anymore. And so I decided to use my interests, I guess, to hopefully make a difference. So I just started looking for event planning work in the nonprofit sector, and I landed at Morning Light. And so I think I have a unique perspective a little bit because I came into the end of life and senior and hospice at kind of a young age where I didn't even realize the value of what that looks like.
Yeah.
You don't, at that age, you don't really get past like the next week, right? So thinking that far ahead just wasn't something that I had done before. But as I mentioned, once I started really talking to the people that we serve and like getting to know them, I just developed an intense interest and passion for the cause. I started as an admin helping with events, and now I'm the executive director and very proud to be there.
Awesome. Amazing. So let's dive into storytelling a little bit. Arguably nonprofits have the best stories to tell.
Absolutely.
But we often don't see nonprofits tell stories well, or maybe not even at all.
Sure.
What's the importance and significance of storytelling, especially as it relates to nonprofits and fundraising and stewardship of donors and so forth?
So I'm really nerdy about storytelling because it's actually very psychological, which is something that I'm interested in. Human brains are hardwired to connect to story. We've been, consuming stories since childhood with bedtime stories. We all have our favorite Netflix show that we like to watch. People look to stories to learn, right? From other people's successes, from other people's mistakes. And so we're eager to consume them. Our brains just like them more than other forms of communication, like statistics, updates, that kind of thing. So if you can take your abstract mission, for example, free hospice housing, that's an abstract mission, but you can give it a face and a name and an identity, like Richard, someone that we served, and tell his story. How did he get there? What kind of common denominators might he have with a donor or someone who wants to support? What might he enjoy as a human being that your audience can see themselves connecting to?
Yeah.
And then also just displaying that classic kind of struggle and then overcoming scenario, right? We all need a good struggle. All nonprofits are solving issues and conflicts and solutions.
Yeah.
Infusing your story with, what that struggle is, but not focusing on that, focusing on the overcoming aspect.
Yeah.
So the resilience, the courage, the compassion, the bravery, the fun of helping someone else. If you can talk about all of those kind of qualities in your story, you'll inspire your listener to then want to join you on that story.
Yeah.
So it's super important because, first of all, you're breaking down those barriers. You're breaking down, stigma. You're giving them something interesting to consume, but then you're inviting them to become a part of the story as well.
Yeah. It reminds me, I read this book, I forget the author, but it's called Story.
Okay.
And it was a USC professor, like in the school of film school. And he talked about like every story needs, you mentioned struggle, like he talked about it in the concept of like a climax, right? Like you're working up towards this climax, and then like you're taking like the audience back down the resolution, like afterwards. And that leads me into somewhat of a controversial topic, I think, with nonprofits. A lot of times, I think you have two types of like storytelling in nonprofits today. It's one is like sort of like the gravity, right?
Sure.
Like how bad it is for like these people, and you show photos that could be disingenuous or photos that maybe like remove the dignity from the individual. And then you have organizations, I think Charity Water does this really well, where they focus on the potential, the success.
Yes.
They really help bring the audience into what you can help accomplish and
Absolutely.
how you can get
hope.
there.
The hope
Thank
factor.
you. I was like
Sure.
struggling to find that word.
Exactly.
So do you think there is a right and wrong way? Do you think
I do.
So I'd love to let's
I
dig
do,
into that.
yeah. So I do a lot of teaching on this, and it's really something that I think is relevant today, is the ethical component of storytelling.
Yeah.
Not exploiting people. People don't want to be cast as a victim. Nobody wants to be a victim, right? We want to showcase, look, these people were dealt a hard hand, or maybe they made some bad choices along the way that got them in a position that they're in now. Maybe they inherited this. Maybe it's stigma and society that's caused this. You never know why someone's backstory has led them to where they are. But I think it's really important to just ethically to showcase the story in a way that they would want it to be told,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
showcasing, like I said, their courage or their kindness or their intellect through the struggle. So we're not necessarily trying to get that shock factor out of everyone.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the gravity that I think a lot of nonprofits have done in the past and maybe just didn't know better because, you know, gravity, I mean, you think about the puppies with Sarah McLachlan over there.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's like, it's very emotional. It's very impactful. However, I think there's a better way to do it personally, which is to showcase, you know, the hope, like you said, and inspiring people.
Yeah.
And bringing them in that way.
I think of a brand that I often think of that's exceptional storytelling, and I think a lot of nonprofits can borrow from is Nike, right?
Yeah.
Like Nike, like they make you believe that if you wear their shoes, you're going to be an Olympian athlete, right? And that's like there's like they don't like talk about, you know, you need to work out more because you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
They're more like focus on like, you know, just this kind of like dream that at one point maybe all of us had. So I think that's interesting. What I do want to dig into is going back to sort of like why so little nonprofits tell great stories. And I think you see this in the way they budget.
Sure.
And so as an executive director, I would love to know, like, what's the priority of storytelling, even at the like budget level? A lot of organizations look at it as an expense, as a negative thing. And so I'd just love to like hear your thought process on and how that gets prioritized.
Yeah, that's a great question. We're a very small nonprofit, honestly. Morning Light is small. And so you have to get creative with how you're sharing your stories. Thank goodness for social media. It's free. Thank goodness for phones with photos and videos. It's free.
Yeah.
What you need to do, in my opinion, that doesn't even cost that much is just have the conversations with people. Just ask them. And I think one of the reasons that people don't tell the stories is because I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with broaching that subject with people. We're kind of almost taught not to pry, like not to ask those personal questions. However, you may be the only person in that person's life to take an interest in their life. As a nonprofit, a professional, you have, like you said, direct access to some of the most incredible stories known to man, right?
Yeah.
We are serving these really unique populations that have a story to share and maybe no one's ever asked them. So instead of worrying about like, oh, I don't want to make them uncomfortable, of course you always give them the option to share or not. You know, it's not a requirement. There's no punishment if you don't share the story. But think about what it would mean to you for someone just to come up to you and say, tell me about your life. You know, what insights do you want to share? What legacy do you want to leave?
Yep.
What message do you have? And then we have this unique way as a nonprofit, as a following, as a voice in the community to then showcase those stories and those voices. And it doesn't take a lot of money. You can do it through email. You can do it online. One of my favorite things that I was taught, especially with social media, is the idea of this episodic approach. So you get the story, and it's a whole story, right? You touched on some of the components of a story. You have the setup, you have the confrontation, you have the climax, and then the resolution. If you can break each of those kind of components of the story up into different materials, you're introducing a character, you're introducing a hook, you're getting them interested in that person's life, but then you take them on the journey with you. And you can post multiple pieces of content. You can share multiple email updates. You know, here's where they were, here's where they are now, here's what they want you to know. Quotes, testimonials, getting it directly from the person also really helps with not exploiting them, as we talked about. You know, those direct quotes, those videos, all you have to do is open your phone and say, do you mind if I record, you know, you sharing your story for a few minutes? It doesn't have to be production. It doesn't have to be bringing in these big expenses of thousands of dollars for first-class videos. We are actually quite accustomed to consuming iPhone content all the time, right? Nobody's going to frown upon that.
Yeah.
So I really wouldn't let budget be a barrier because you already have the tools. If you have people that work for you, you have people that you serve, you have a phone, and you have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
You've got what it takes to start sharing those stories.
Totally. Has storytelling always been a priority of your organization, or is that something that you helped kind of usher in as the executive director?
I love that question. So we didn't always share our content in the form of story.
Okay.
It used to be this abstract, right? We're free hospice. I think what I brought in, because I'm a writer by passion, you know, I've always written and I really appreciated the stories. I said, we need to be showcasing these human beings. We need to be saying names and showing faces. And when we did that, we actually saw a major increase. So since I've come on board for about 5 years now, and we've increased our fundraising 120%.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I think that a lot of that is just due to how we framed the language.
Yeah.
And it's a shortcut to communication.
Yeah.
And actually, I won the Storyteller of the Year award at the One Cause Raise conference in 2019 for some of the work that we've done. And the secret really is, don't let the budget be the barrier.
Yeah.
You just have
like
to
that.
find those stories. The other little hot tip that I have that I do want to share is if you have a great story and you've packaged a great story, you've done the work for the media. So if you start to reach out to some contacts in your hometown or wherever your community consumes their content, news stations, newspapers, other kinds of PR, will be more interested in partnering with you because you've done the work for them. You say, listen, I have this great story. Listen to this inspiring story. I think your listeners will really resonate with it.
Yeah.
Then they don't have to come in and improv.
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing the work for them, and that really worked for us. We got in several newspapers, news stations, and I think that really helped us spread our message.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that hustle. That's a great
hustler.
tip. Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a few last questions. Rapid fire. There's no.
This is stressing me out.
there's no wrong or right answer here.
Okay.
So let's go through them. All right.
Okay.
So movies or series?
Ooh. Series.
Series. Okay. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos.
Beach or the mountains?
Beach all day.
Beach. Oh, good. Yep. Digital reading or an actual book?
Book. I like the paper. Turn
Hard
the pages.
Hard or soft cover?
Soft.
Soft.
I do. I like the soft covers.
Like easy to travel with, or you just
you can flip them and kind of move them. They're lighter.
Yeah. Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Yeah, everyone is saying ice cream. I think froyo's on its way out.
I'm sorry, but I think it had its moment.
It did. Football or football?
That's a good question. So I'm actually engaged to a UK resident.
Okay.
Yes. So he's getting me into the football. But my dad would say football. So
you're torn.
I'm torn.
Well, congratulations on the engagement.
Thanks.
All right, last one here. Moana or Aladdin?
Oh, I love this. I'm a Disney nerd completely. Okay. I can't choose. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. Aladdin was my time. Moana's my kids' time. It's got a special place in both my hearts.
Yeah.
I love both.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. In this segment, Chad Barger, otherwise known as Fundraiser Chad and founder of Productive Fundraising, looks back at the effect the pandemic has had on fundraising events. The result? A world that needs both virtual and in-person events to maximize participation. Chad, thank you for joining the podcast.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How's AFP been so far?
It's ICON. We're back in person, seeing people you haven't seen in 3 years. So it's been fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand you're speaking tomorrow, talking about events.
Yeah, I'm doing a session called Productive Events. We're kind of talking through, the last 2 years have been a little challenging for events. So maybe we made some changes and now we maybe can go back to normal, but do we want to? Really looking at those true purpose of events and taking this as an opportunity, not just, I can't wait to go back to doing what we always did.
Yeah, I'm really curious about, because I feel like a lot of really good lessons were learned in the pandemic for organizations. And early on we heard about a lot of success stories of organizations who went hybrid or who went virtual. And so I'm curious as well to see if it's gonna stick around. It's all good. We can. His phone is off. I'll kind of start. Yeah, you didn't hear that probably, huh? Okay, cool. That's all good. I'll wind back a little bit. Something I've been very curious about is now that events are possible to do in person, will nonprofits go back to that? And one of the things in particular I'm interested in is specifically around galas. I think the beauty of what happened over the pandemic was that people were able to reach a much larger audience
for sure
with their events.
Yep.
And if they go back in person, are they going to keep that digital component of the event? And so what are your thoughts?
We're definitely right in the midst of exploring that right now. I mean, many groups are going back to what I did before, or I can do in person. They're super excited. The virtual hybrid kind of thing, it took a lot of work to learn, and not everybody loved it. Not everybody's that digital native or had that training. They had to hire somebody or figure it out real fast. So I see a big retreat of people wanting to go back, But we also taught our donors that we can do these virtual events. There can be other experiences.
Yeah.
So a quick story, I had a client in the fall. They took their gala back to in-person, and they got about half the audience. Not everybody was comfortable yet, but they wanted to. And then they had the other half of the audience say, remember last year when we did that virtual event? You sent me wine and showed up online, and there was a sommelier that walked me through a wine tasting or something, and I sat on my couch in my pajamas, and I still paid you $250. Yeah, I want to do that again. I like that. I don't have to put the tux on, give up my Saturday night. And I'm seeing that, they'll still come to some things, but maybe they want that option.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking like we need something in our portfolio that kind of appeals to both.
To both, yeah.
And our other big side too is this hybrid word of like, doing the in-person but having the online component, and I can join in. And it's just really, really hard to do well.
Yeah.
Not having somebody feel like they're left out. And it's usually the virtual folks. Like you can't just put up a camera in the back of the room and say,
call it
It's more like producing a 30-minute television show.
Yeah.
And
to do it right, it's a lot more challenging. But I think the interesting thing is galas require so much work around the programming, right? Like usually exclusive content's created, for the events, whether it's video format or whatever it might be, a lot of time and effort. And it's a bummer that it only 200-300 people get to experience it over, and so what's nice about the sort of hybrid approach is a lot more shelf life, a lot more eyeballs on it.
Accessibility and equity. I mean, those are kind of the two things. Like anybody can get to it, much broader audience. Our sponsors are happier because they, get much more reach. You can actually play their 30-second commercial in the middle of your gala without having to rent $5,000 worth of equipment to do it, actually in the ballroom. And we just have all this shelf life.
Yeah.
And I mentioned accessibility and equity, so anybody could get to it.
Yeah.
And it's not just, people that might not be fully able to, but also folks, when I was a development director, I would have donors that said, I'd love to come to your gala, but I just don't drive at night, so I'm not going to go home. So they could do it.
Yeah.
And on the equity side, anybody could attend. It wasn't, I can't afford the $250 ticket. The virtual events had much different pricing options.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So your company, Productive Fundraising,
right?
Talk us about your core kind of focus.
So we do fundraising training and coaching, primarily focusing on small to mid-sized shops, and have a kind of some key niches, a lot in the library field and museums as well. So, and we, do a lot of virtual training, board training, those kind of things, and we have a free monthly webinar series, which has proven to be pretty popular. So,
what was the jump from being on the front lines as a development director to more of the coach, trainer?
Yeah, kind of fell into that role. I was doing my dream job. I was the executive director of a United Arts Fund. I'm a former band geek, so I loved being that talking head that would come on stage at the beginning of the concert and tell you to turn off your cell phone, which I failed to do at this interview. I know you guys are going to take it out, but just epic fail there. So I was loving that, raising mostly corporate money for the arts in my community, and got really involved with AFP, became a chapter president, started getting asked to speak, learned that I love speaking because it's like a rehearsed performance, just like marching band was, kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then more speak, people just say, hey, will you come into my shop and work with us? And fell into it and learned I love that too. And about 5 years ago, I had to make the hard decision of, which way.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
But can't totally stop, so I still volunteer and fundraise for some causes in my community as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
What would you say are some of the biggest gaps that you see as you work with clients and training development directors that you're helping?
Yeah, I think I can approach that two ways. Like, there's definitely sometimes a knowledge gap in fundraising, especially it's so hard to find, a knowledgeable fundraiser. There's definitely more opportunity than there are people. So a lot of times folks will hire for, passion and just, somebody they know that can be a good relationship builder.
Yeah.
And then kind of teach that skill set later. So we do a good bit of onboarding coaching work that way. But usually that's fixable. Like I say, I can't fix passion. You got to have that.
Yeah.
I can't make you a people person. You kind of got to have that. We can do the skills.
Yeah.
But the other side I see too is people that just struggle with like how to work, like how to manage myself, like all this emails and meetings and skills. And now with the whole virtual and at home and like it's just this how to handle everything.
Yeah.
And time, energy, attention. So I'm a bit of a productivity nerd as well. So I love helping people with that with some suggestions and tips as well.
Awesome. What are you looking forward to the remainder of 2022, whether it's new projects that you're working on or something new you're trying out with your business?
Yeah, well, I'm just excited to finally be back out on the road.
Yeah.
So I typically travel once a month to a random AFP chapter or, Iowa Museums Association, something like that for conferences, and that really revs me up and keeps me moving. So the road show is back on, and here we go.
Nice.
So, so looking forward to seeing people out and about anywhere. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. All right, I got some rapid fire questions for you. So don't worry, no right or wrong answer here, but we'll start with, are you more of a movies or series guy?
I'm going to opt down and go podcast, but if you force me to turn the screen on, I'll say series.
Series, okay. Yeah. So what's your top 3 favorite podcasts?
Ooh, that is really hard. I love stuff in that productivity space, being a productivity nerd, so I'll go with Asian Efficiency. So it's great tips, excellent hosts, good folks.
Awesome, cool. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos.
Beach or the mountains?
Mountains. Scout leader.
Mountains. Yeah. Oh, yeah? And you're fine with the cold?
Yeah, there's no such thing as too cold. It's just wrong gear. I love, try to hike about 20 miles a week. So.
Wow. Digital reading or an actual book?
I do like the actual books, but they're just hard to carry around, so I'm more digital. I always have the Kindle with me.
Or maybe a listen, the audio?
Yeah, but I have too many podcasts, so I don't have enough room for the audio books.
Ice cream or froyo?
It's got to have bacon on it if I'm going to eat it. I have no sweet tooth, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All savory, huh?
Yeah, so I like the jalapeno kettle cooked chips. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
whole bags, just going to eat it at once. Yeah.
Next time we'll have a bag for you.
All right,
sitting here. Football or football?
Football. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers. Last one, Moana or Aladdin?
Both good. I'm going to go Aladdin because I remember being 12 when it came out and seeing it in the theater, and it was awesome. That kind of took animation to another new level. And I saw the Broadway production on Broadway, and it was pretty cool. I still don't know how the genie came out of the floor. Mystified.
Mystery, still mystery.
Yeah,
still mystery.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast again. I look forward to having more conversations in the future.
Sounds great. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. In this segment, Courtney Gaines, Senior Vice President at NextAfter, shares the one thing that every nonprofit has to do, large or small, whatever the level of tech savviness, no matter the mission, and how your nonprofit's culture is stopping you from doing it. Courtney,
yes.
So good to have you here.
Yes.
How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's AFP been so far?
Great. My first time, actually.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I spoke this morning about value proposition. Had a great crowd.
Awesome.
So, yeah, glad to be here.
The only thing AFP is missing is the themed events.
You are so right. Like, where's the Wizard of Oz?
I don't know.
Where's the Willy Wonka?
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, not to plug our summit or anything, but September,
you
Kansas
all
City.
should go. Yeah, there you go. I was actually talking last night. I forget the nonprofit, but
sure.
I was telling them about NIO.
Yeah.
And we actually were debating: is it NIO or is it?
Well, that's the debate. No, I call it NEO.
NEO. Okay.
I was employee 4, so I mean, there's some weight behind that.
Yeah.
You know?
So NEO it is. We're going with NEO. Yeah. And I was telling them, I was like, because they're like, you were talking about like best nonprofit conferences.
Sure.
I was like, I said NIO, but now it's going to be NEO.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? I was like, well, the themes are always just over the top,
off the charts.
Yeah. So we're looking at like
who has a chocolate fountain going through the floor of their speaking gig.
Yeah. Anyway, so tell us a little bit. I mean, we've talked with a few people NextAfter, but for those just tuning in, tell us a little bit about NextAfter and what you guys specialize in.
Yeah, we're really 3 things. We're a research lab, a training institute, and then a digital-first agency.
Okay.
So we work with the top about 5 to 10% of nonprofits, and really with the goal of building and growing their digital fundraising programs.
So one would maybe think top 5-10% nonprofits have it all together. My guess is they're dinosaurs, and there's a lot of overhaul that needs to happen. What's the experience?
Yeah, right. Whether you're a mom and pop shop or of the top 5 to 10%, I think everyone deals with the same challenges, whether that's technology or honestly very foundational, just like understanding donors. As good as we we all think we might be or understand our donors as well as we do. We don't.
Yeah.
And we know that, and we see that through the testing that we do. So.
And I imagine, I mean, with the size of nonprofits you work with, you know, they're at a certain scale, and so you see a lot of interesting insights or learnings.
Yeah.
From the perspective of fundraising, what do you see works at scale that maybe doesn't work for like a smaller organization?
Sure. I think actually what's surprising about that, Justin, is that whether it's small or large, a lot of it is repeatable.
Okay.
And I think that that's what technology is so great about, is that some of the things that we do on the smaller scale, one-to-one communication, we can do at the large scale. You know, one of the biggest things over the last year, and even like what COVID I think taught us or demonstrated to us, is that people do want to be cared for. They want to be talked to. They, you know, want to feel valued. And so we heightened our communications and cultivation through that season. And we're not stopping just because COVID is, quote, over. Is it over? Whatever it is.
I'm calling it post-COVID.
Post-COVID, yeah.
It just feels reassuring.
Right. So we can actually automate all of that for these larger scale organizations. So, you know, actually I think that there's a lot that we can learn from smaller shops that are doing very like intimate, grassroots, human contact kind of stuff, and actually help our larger organizations do some of those things, because what we're seeing is the more human we can be, more personal we can be, the greater success these larger organizations have.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to lean on that big brand that they are, that people know them as. They do well, of course, on the paid media side because they have a big name.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, donors are donors. Donors are people. And whether I'm giving to a massive organization, and a lot of the organizations we work with, or some smaller one, you know, they're still giving to a cause that they believe in regardless of size.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the brand name brand recognition, that tongue twister there. I was talking with, like, about a year ago, World Vision.
Sure.
And which they're in the top percentile.
For sure.
But it was interesting because they said that they had a name brand recognition problem in the United States. And
shocking.
Yeah, so it got me thinking, is that it, like when you think of like Nike, right?
Sure.
Like everyone knows Nike. And when you are talking about like nonprofits in particular, like in the nonprofit world, it's a big brand.
Sure.
But like I guess here's the question. Sorry, it's long about ways. Does that not translate to like individual donors or like the general population, because less people give than buy Nikes? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So like, is name brand recognition harder for nonprofits because the audience is smaller?
Oh, that's a tough question, Justin.
Yeah. I mean, just a light little, thing to think about.
I don't look at them in the same breath. Like,
Yeah.
If I'm going to purchase a new pair of Nike Kicks and give to a nonprofit, whether it has great name recognition or not, my motivation is radically different. And maybe I'm not answering your question right. So I think that there's things that we can do about name recognition, and there's things that we do about name recognition. And we can do that easily digitally. But I don't think it's an issue really at all.
Yeah.
And I think that those larger organizations, they do lean on that brand recognition. They do see easier, greater, better results than the smaller ones.
Is that trust, just because it's like, I know my money is going to be used, I'm guaranteeing my money is going to be used better than if I give to a smaller organization? Or is it that? Or
no, I don't think necessarily. I think for donors, it's like, how well are you communicating your value proposition? Like, at the end of the day, whether you're the largest nonprofit or the small nonprofit, actually what we see with large nonprofits is they do tend to lean on that brand recognition and get a little bit lazier with value proposition and communicating really like what it is that they do, or like what a donor can actually accomplish through their organization. Because like, well, we're so-and-so, like, of course you want to give to us.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't matter if you have a well-known name or not. You still have to communicate what you're doing, because at the end of the day, like, there's also a retention thing, right? So if I give to you because I think you're cool this week, and actually that's a thing that's happening with the younger demographic, is younger demographics are giving to organizations one that they like this week. In a month, they're like, oh, I like this one, so they give to another one. Like whatever is kind of out in the marketplace. then that all you're leaning on at that point is brand recognition, instead of like, oh, by the way, you're doing this incredible mission, and reminding them of that mission over and over and over again. So to me, it's like value proposition conquers everything, whether you have a big brand or small brand, and that is an area that, regardless of size, that we have to do better at.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is donor experience. I was talking earlier with Francesco from UNICEF, and his sole job was donor experience, and to come up with like a methodology to score sort of like how satisfied, kind of like an NPS, but a little bit more in depth and so forth. And their sort of like thesis, which I totally agree with, is that like if we can retain X percentage more donors, we'll grow faster. Because acquiring donors is more expensive and it's harder.
Absolutely.
So the question is, working with the top 5 to 10% of nonprofits, how much do they prioritize donor experience, and to the point of like even budgeting for donor experience, right? And not just like how good does your website look and how easy is it to donate, more kind of like the stewardship side of like what is the experience post donation.
Yeah, sadly, maybe do I start with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Sadly, it's terrible.
Yeah.
No, I mean I would love to we would love to think that they're doing an incredible job at that, but again, I think that so much is focused on acquisition.
Yeah.
That donor experience does kind of become at least a secondary or even like the third priority.
Yeah.
Acquisition is always at the forefront of everything. So to hear that, like, that is his job. Your job is donor experience. I want that job, first of all. That's my favorite part is loving on donors. That's a whole nother story. So most organizations do not have necessarily a separate team devoted to a donor experience. I'd be curious what he's doing.
Yeah.
And maybe other teams are like, well, our marketing team does that, or our XYZ team does that. They just don't have a cool title like our friend from UNICEF. But it is an area that I think that it's like, well, we do it. We think we do it well, but it's I don't
put them on our newsletter. We give them an email every once in a while. Oh yeah, we got great experience.
Right, exactly. So are they doing it well? I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement there for honestly all nonprofits, which is crazy to think that because we're working with these larger ones.
Yeah,
so.
And it's the reason why I'm like really interested in this topic because retention has just been horrendous.
Yes.
For decades. And it doesn't seem like nonprofits are really trying to address it.
Sure, and coming out of COVID.
Right, yeah. And or like even like, or they're like they're like, oh, like we got to get tech to like do this for us. Like to me, this isn't a tech solution.
No, not at all.
It's really a strategic like initiative.
Intention.
It's culture at the organization. Yeah, an intention. And it's like to me, it's also a math problem. Yeah. It's so easy to math out.
Yeah.
If we were to increase retention by X%.
Yes.
We could bring down costs on acquisition, and we could actually grow at this rate.
Yeah,
I just don't understand why like this hasn't been addressed.
It is wild.
And is it like, and so it gets me thinking, how much of it is on the organization versus the donor's attention span, and they find a new cause.
Sure.
I don't know if there's I don't have any data around sort of like the average kind of like lifespan a donor gives to an organization. So I'm kind of curious about that. But
yeah, I mean, it's our job. It's our job. And I say our job is fundraisers. So it's whether that's an agency that's helping you, it's the organization itself. It is our job to retain the donors. Yeah. Yes, they're going to get distracted and they're going to be, whatever the next best nonprofit is that maybe they're going to give to for younger demographics. But at the end of the day, we have to understand how to retain them and what brought them in originally. And I just don't think that a lot of the times we do a lot of that work. Yeah. I think we, again, become lazy of like, well, we acquired them. They're just not staying on our file because they're not staying on our file. They're bored with us or, whatever it is. They went on and moved on. Well, the reality is like, have we done our work to actually say, well, what is it that motivated them to give in the first place? What have they been receiving? Is it the right kind of communication? Is it the right frequency of communication? Are we giving them that high touch experience? I just actually gave a talk on mid-level giving. And someone's like, well, could I just do this like high touch to our broad-based general file? I'm like, 100% we should be.
Yeah.
Because that is the problem, Justin, is like, we said we have this like mid-level donor crisis because they're not getting high touch and not getting regular, communications like the general file. But really, at the end of the day, if retention is an issue, and we know that major donors are sticking around because we're giving them a white glove treatment, and mid-levels are starting to come around to that, then why are we not treating the rest of our file in that way?
Yeah.
And we can. But again, it comes back to the organization. It is our responsibility to do that.
Another thing that, on this point, not to bring up UNICEF again, but I was fascinated by this because they're trying to solve this retention problem internally as well. And they started doing testing different like strategies. And so they broke a group of donors into 2 different cohorts, same size gifts, within the same year of giving, right? So they had 2 different cohorts. And one group, they called on their birthday to say happy birthday, like you mean a lot to us. And the other group, they didn't. The group that they made those phone calls to had increased their gift by 5x and stayed around almost 3 times longer.
Amazing.
And it's just a simple thing. Yeah, that small little thing like that.
A birthday phone call.
Yeah.
We've done testing with that in email. We added 1 additional email on a weekend. All it was cultivation, value add to half of our file for 6 months. We looked at the retention and giving after. Again, no additional asks. They were getting everything else that everyone else was getting. It was 1 additional cultivation email just to check in on them, give them an article, really just to love on them. And it increased overall revenue by 26%.
Wow.
1 additional cultivation.
One yeah. That's amazing. It's
amazing.
amazing.
From some random person at the organization who had never sent an email before, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's like top of mind. Yeah, we did, when I was at Liberty, North Korea, we did, we called it like your birthday, your something. It was on the anniversary of your first gift to the organization.
Oh yeah.
And so 12 months after your first gift, you get an email to say, hey, happy giving birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for. And we didn't do an ask, but the conversion rate and people actually come back and just giving after that
remarkable.
was remarkable. And so sometimes it's like the smallest, dumbest things.
No, and again,
that actually work.
It doesn't take a lot, and that's why my word was it takes intention.
Yeah,
that is it.
That's it.
That is it.
Yeah.
It's not some big additional team, big additional budget, big additional technology. It is really just how about we start caring?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, one last question and then rapid fire.
All right.
Any campaigns coming up that you're really excited about that you think is new, different, anything that that you're excited or project?
Yeah. We're doing a mobile giving study right now.
Okay.
That's going to come out in the fall, right before our summit.
Nice.
So I'm really excited about that because we do a ton of testing. We have we just hit today 3,500 experiments in our library, which is a huge accomplishment. They ring the bell, have a cake come in, all the things while I'm here. So 3,500 experiments, and of those experiments, most of them are not focused on mobile giving. And while we did test, whatever the thing is, the element we tested was on both desktop and mobile devices, the test and the hypothesis itself was not focused on the mobile device. And we know, obviously, the mobile experience is so radically different.
Yeah.
And so we did a research study. We just conducted it, just finished giving to over 200 and some organizations through our mobile phones, and looked at the experience of the giving form, what communications looked like after. And now we're pulling together the research for that to kind of see, what is the state of nonprofit giving on mobile devices? And that also then allows us to understand and look for opportunities of where and what we should be testing to get an even greater response on mobile devices, because we know that mobile giving is about half of what it is on desktop, even though traffic is, almost double what it is on mobile devices.
Yeah.
So
interesting. I'm excited to read that report.
Too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Right. Let's do some rapid fire.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Here. There's no right or wrong answers, so
okay.
don't stress it.
All right.
Okay. First question: are you more into movies or series?
I know this is rapid fire. I understand that it takes one answer.
It's all right. You can have multiple if you need it.
Series if I'm at home, movies in the theater for the popcorn.
Okay. What series? What's your active series right now?
I do really dark drama TV series, so I'm finishing Ozarks right now.
Okay. If you want to stay on the dark theme,
yes.
Go to Severance next.
Done.
Yeah, it's so good. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Oh, tacos.
Tacos. You're in Texas, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But not originally, but yeah.
All right. Okay. Beach or the mountains?
Beach, hands down.
Oh yeah, easy.
My home, yeah.
Digital reading or where's your home?
No, not really.
Oh, your home.
Not
I see.
Really.
Yeah,
it's like in my heart.
In your heart. Yeah. I got it. I got you.
Okay.
Digital reading or an actual book?
Audio.
Audio. Okay. There you go.
Right.
Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Ice cream. I think everyone has said ice cream. I think froyo is on its
gone.
way out.
It's like cupcakes.
Yeah.
Old news.
Yeah, absolutely. Football or football?
Football.
Football. Okay. Last one here. Moana or Aladdin?
Oh, I know. Rapid fire. Pain. The Disney heart in me is painful right now. Aladdin. Come
Aladdin.
on.
Okay.
90s.
Yeah.
The best Disney
So
movies.
you're talking about the cartoon, not the real life Aladdin.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The original.
Yeah. The original. Yeah. Awesome.
I would do Moana for the beach side of things, but and I lived in Hawaii for a while too.
Oh, nice.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining the podcast. Have a good rest of the conference.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Nonstop Nonprofit. This podcast is brought to you by your friends at Funraise, nonprofit fundraising software built by nonprofit people. If you'd like to continue the conversation, find me on LinkedIn or text me at 562-242-8160. And don't forget to get your next episode the second it hits the internets. Go to nonstopnonprofitpodcast.com and sign up for email notifications today. See you next time.